and in the meantime to proceed with an online, how novel, a virtual conference this year. How that will happen, we don't know yet. All I can tell you is that I think it'll take place definitely the week of the 9th of November as originally planned, and will kind of be spread out over 3-4 days. In what format, our program co-chairs will discuss that in a second. But in the meantime, I wanted to give it to Matt Tarr, who is the president of MCN this year, to hi, Matt. So over to you.
Well, thanks, Eric. Hi, I'm Matt. I'm this year's president, and I will probably have the dubious luxury of having been the only person to serve as president not having a physical gathering in which to sort of wear my crown, which I had for half an hour at the end of the last conference. It's in my office now. I'll send out a tweet of it at some point. But yeah, Eric and I and the rest of the board have been, working feverishly, although we're also all, as I'm sure all of you guys are, distracted by our day jobs and our families and homeschooling and all that kind of ridiculousness that's going on right now, as well as the sort of overarching sort of tragedy of our time. May you live in interesting times. But we were going through all of these details, and I just said at some point to Eric that I felt like we should gather, especially around the confusion around the call for proposals, which we're going to get into in a little while. And I don't mean confusing in that the call for proposals is confusing, but we are in confusing times, and the call for proposals is coming out at the same time. So get together and really be visible, be vulnerable, be part of the community, and talk about what we know, what we don't know, and how what we're doing, and what kind of partially what kind of help we need. I think one of the things that I when I put my hat into the ring to be president, my point was that I personally have a relationship with MCN. That is, I came in as a conference goer, and then sort of like saw the value of it and wanted to get more deeply involved, and just sort of like fell into this community. I was conference first, community second. But once I was involved with the community, realized that that's really the magic of MCN, and also there's no distinction. I realized a lot of people were sort of like us, them, and would talk to us board members like they would say you, and I would always say us, you, us, you, us. Like it really is us, and this is an opportunity for those of you to have, if you have questions, to get them answered. Hopefully, although we don't have a ton of answers, we're going to talk about that. But also, if you have ideas, now's the time. And if you have energy and goals and desires for this community, bring them. Actually, I have a note here to just mention, we're really interested in MCN being a place for the community to come together. We're not directing, we're not leading. We're following from the middle somewhere, hopefully, and we're facilitating. And so one of those things is that we want to sort of amplify the stories of what we are going through as individuals and professionals. So if you've got a story that you want to tell or that needs to be heard, even if you don't want to tell it, email marketing@mcn.edu. We're definitely looking for those kinds of submissions to push back out to the community. And of course, the SIGs, if you're not in a SIG, get in one and spread the good word about that. My notes here, Eric sort of said it a little bit about like the hug and whatnot, you know what I mean? Like I'm sitting here in a hoodie, hiding away at a friend's house, with really bad Wi-Fi, and working 3 days a week, 2 days of vacation, and forced because my organization has to figure out how to recoup, like all of us. So these are really awkward times, but I think together is the only way we're going to get through it. And MCN, I'll leave you with this. I was walking in New Orleans, I think, and I said to Suze, who I didn't know that well at the time, I was like, what is the difference between MCN and these other conferences? And she said, MCN is a community. And I was like, okay, right on. And so that's the thing. It's like, we are us, you know what I mean? And I just wanted to make sure that is very clear. We're all in this together. So let's have an amazing conference, and let's talk about it. So I'll pass this along to whoever's next. And thanks for showing up. 83 people. Sorry, who?
So,
I think is it us?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can kick it off. I'm Meredith. I'm one of the incoming co-chairs for the conference this year. And I just first wanted to, I guess, introduce the theme, because that is the first order of business that we have every year as a conference committee. And we start the conversation in January, February, and that is when we have to decide the theme. So obviously, when we started the theme, this was before the COVID-19 crisis grew exponentially and globally. And as we worked to scaffold the theme, and quite literally just before we were ready to release that description, the threat of the outbreak here became a reality. There were additional discussions kind of afterwards regarding the theme. Should we change it or add a mention to COVID-19 as a subtitle? Determined that we needed to keep it. And it is sustainability, preserve progress, or preserve progress. That's kind of the fun thing about it. And in doing so, we really aim to explore our own resilience, our ability to support our institutions and ourselves. What does enduring technology look like? What are the tensions that we find in this forward motion? And we found that looking through the theme through the lens of our current environment still works. And furthermore, we didn't want MCN 2020 to be a COVID conference. We acknowledge and we are affected by these layoffs, these furloughs, and these budget cuts. But that's kind of why we felt the need to keep our focus broad. And we all do such good work, whether or not it is related to the current crisis. And we feel that the work that we do needs to be explored, interrogated, shared, and discussed.
And this year, I just wanted to emphasize that we're introducing thematic strands to better steer conversations around the theme. My name is Mimosa, and I'm one of the program conference co-chairs this year, along with Meredith, Andrea Ledesma, and Andrea Montiel de Shuman. And so looking at the strands, just very quickly, what do we mean by them? They're a way to focus upon a facet of this year's theme of sustainability. And briefly, I just wanted to give you an overview of what we mean. So consider that in addition to COVID-19, museums have had to plan for potential disasters while maintaining operations for decades. And how do we best respond to a crisis while considering safety or staff morale and data solvency? What strategies might we nurture when it comes to maintenance? Certainly, this isn't a singular episode, but ongoing, occasionally unglamorous work that remains vital to our institutional mission. Bearing in mind our community, how can we collaborate to further promote and use interdisciplinary approaches to our collections, curation, and the platforms upon which they're presented? This particular moment is a time when we can and should consider how our institutions can transform themselves. What new tools and training might we use to increase, for example, equity of access and inclusion into our organizational structures? We wouldn't be who we are without our communities. How might we recognize the power of storytelling to further amplify underrepresented voices in our collections and in gathering those stories, especially now? And above all, let's remain open and curious about our work with one another. Sustainability hinges upon our ability to care for ourselves. What futures can we imagine together that address employee burnout and think more broadly about what it means to have progress in the new future?
Thanks, Mimosa and Meredith, for the rundown of the theme and the strands. Hi, folks. I'm Andrea Ledesma. As Mimosa mentioned, I'm one of the other co-chairs for MCN 2020. So I just wanted to quickly review the call for proposals. So for folks who have attended and presented at MCN previously, this probably looks pretty familiar to you folks. We are accepting proposals still this year for plenary panels, 30 and 60-minute sessions, deep dives, workshops, and the other session type, the wild card, as I like to think about it. The format of the proposal also looks quite familiar, probably, as we're asking authors to describe their session related to MCN and the theme, and share details about the co-presenters and the presentation methods. You will, however, notice a brief section at the end of the call for proposals that we've added to gather notes and ideas for this virtual program model. As Matt mentioned, we are in the midst of researching and figuring out what November will look like online, and we're not asking folks to commit to a specific format, committing them to a webinar or an article or whatnot, but still just trying to get a sense of what types of experiences people might be interested in offering online. And we'll use that, the co-chairs and the conference program committee, to figure out, what could this schedule look like in November, and what platforms and resources will we need to provide to presenters to ensure that you guys are ready when we do go live. As with other years too, our proposals are always vetted, and as we think about, how does this particular session relate to MCN's mission and the theme, with the strands in particular, we're excited to see how people more explicitly connect this work to our theme this year. And we're also reviewing sessions to see how well they amplify and diversify voices across our institution and the field overall. We are also figuring out a way to consider how viable a session might be for a virtual model, and we're kind of excited to see how presenters play with this online format. Personally, I'm really excited for what this other session type will rot this year. We're due May 17th. That is the deadline, midnight in your time zone. But we do know that these session proposals take time as you think about who your collaborators are going to be, what specifically you're going to present, and just writing the whole thing. So we are actively monitoring this and thinking about a deadline extension. So if a deadline extension is decided, we will roll that out via Twitter, email, and the website. And just some housekeeping, you probably noticed that mcn.edu looks very different. It was reskinned and looks great. And with that, the actual platform that supports our call for proposals has shifted as well. And with any sort of new platform, there might be some hiccups. So if you experience any problems with submitting or updating your session proposal, or just have questions about this whole thing, the inbox for us is always open. That's program@mcn.edu. Mimosa, Meredith, Montiel, and myself are the humans at the other end of that, and we're happy to help. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. My name is Andrea Montiel de Shuman, and I'm the fourth co-chair. And on this call, I just want to talk a little bit about what the conference will look like, and be super honest in the fact that we don't know exactly. I think that you are all familiar with the fact that this world is changing by the second, and we cannot make assumptions, complete assumptions of how the world will look like in November. But we do know a few things, and as we are observing how the world is changing and how we can select the best tools for the best possible digital engagement with all of you, I think that it is also important that we are to inform that we are dreaming of a longer experience. So it's not going to be your classic 4 days worth of a conference. We are thinking of a month-long experience. And while there's not so many specific details, we do know that the idea is that during this month is spread out, and we are all collaborating on reflecting about what's happening and pushing, definitely push our sector. So we will continue to inform you, and we will keep a close eye on making sure they have the latest information of what the actual conference will look like. What I can tell you is going to be a longer experience. We're going to spread out the sessions and make sure there's some days where maybe there's more content than others, but we are learning as much as we can on conference models. But with all of this, maybe you're wondering, why will I even submit a proposal? So maybe we can start talking about why we definitely are, why we're here talking about this, and why we dream with all of you, hopefully submitting some of your thoughts. So I'd start by the fact that we want to recognize that our sector is going through a lot. We know that many of you are overwhelmed, and you're focusing your energy in surviving and making sure that your families stay well. So with all of that in mind, we still think that a conference is an opportunity to slow down and invest some reflective practice, encourage one another, and bring some good thinking, good reflection, and also some healing to our sector. I would love to hear from my co-chairs what your thoughts are on that as well.
I think you set up beautifully, Montiel, so thank you. And one more note is just a big thank you to our program committee. They helped us define a really kick-ass theme, and I'm excited for their help in reviewing sessions and thinking through this blueprint as well.
I also wanted to chime in and say we have a lot of gratitude towards our DEAI, Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Inclusion Advisory Board for helping us to consider the many ways that we can be a more welcoming space, both in person and online this year, towards our entire community and to grow the possibility for others to join in our conversation that had not been able to before.
Fantastic.
Hi, guys. This is Jared. I'll turn my camera on as well. So for the next section here, we want to let people, if they want to, of their own volition, kind of ask the questions that they've shared in chat. We're collecting those in a sheet so we can go through them essentially one by one. We'll unmute you. I'll just kind of call your... Yeah, you will have to, I'm sorry, you'll have to unmute yourself. So I'll make sure that you're aware that we're going with your question. We got them kind of in the order that they're in chat, so you can follow along there as well. So that being said, the first person we have on our list was Ashley Bowen. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, we'll kind of hand this virtual.
Hi, sorry, for some reason, can you all hear me? Because I just lost sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh, you're back now. Great. Yeah, my question was just about what, if any, conversations have been happening yet around the registration fees and the cost of attending a virtual conference. I know that I've just changed institutions, but I know that we were thinking really hard about how to prioritize our budgets and not wanting to necessarily, that on one hand, in theory, we should be getting all the same kinds of enrichment and content out of a meeting that we're planning, especially with this much advance notice online. But I think that can be a harder sell for some departments that are facing tight budgets for then paying for a webinar. So I'm just curious what you all are thinking about. And also, and this maybe is an opportunity to talk about what kinds of costs we need to recoup from the annual meeting this year, if there are costs that can't be avoided from lost deposits or whatever.
I'm happy to take that question. First of all, we hadn't opened registration yet, nor had we sold any sponsorship of booth from vendors. So there's no money on the table to be reimbursed. That said, so two things. I think first to reassure everyone on the affordability of the online program. MCN is a 501c3 organization. Not all organizations out there are, so that's number one. To be honest with you, we've never made money out of the conference. We break even, and for those of you who are interested, our 990 form is public domain. You're more than welcome to go out on Guide by Star and check it out for yourselves. It's not that as I said, our goal is to serve the community. Our goal is not to make money on anyone. So what the model that we're kind of looking at right now is a model that I'm sure you've heard from many other players in the field. We're looking at a subscription model, which would be an annual membership. The model that we have currently is a $90 per person per annual membership. That is probably going to come down drastically. We are really committed, and Matt is here and many of the board members are on this call. We are absolutely committed to affordability and accessibility for all. Our motto is really no one turn away who cannot attend. All right. So I don't want to give out numbers out there, but when I say it'll be, a very affordable, maybe like monthly subscription with an annual discount if you pay up front, but it will be really affordable. I can assure you that much. The conference track, so that annual membership most likely will give you access behind a paywall to all the content that most of you have been accessing If you're already members of our SIGs through our Basecamp, obviously it's not the ideal tool, but for lack of a better tool, this is the tool that we're using for now. And so the content that the SIGs will be putting out on a rolling basis will be part of that annual membership. The conference track, which will be the content produced around the conference in November, will be also an additional fee. And it will not be in the hundreds of dollars because there's no way that we could justify that. And we have no hotel, no food, no travel. So, again, I really can't say because we're still working out the numbers. Our goal is to make that available or reveal it at least probably early July. But the conference would be, again, an affordable one-time fee. The only thing that might be also an additional fee might be workshops, because workshops are really kind of master classes in many ways and require a lot of investment on the part of presenters. But they will not be $150 like they have been on site in the past. So I hope that, Ashley, that answers your question. And if anyone, while I'm on the topic, if there's anyone else that wants me to elucidate part of that pricing issue, I'm trying to look at other.
They'll surface them.
Okay, I'm just trying to look at the chat if there's other related pricing question.
Yeah. I mean, I think you covered the gist of it, which is that, the offering's up in the air, but the pricing will be, will be very reasonable. We're not even talking, even when we go virtual, you can do that different ways. And we're talking about things like Zoom and Google and, not crazy expensive, things like that. So, and I personally, I'll tell you where I come from is I've always felt that the organization should be paying for my attendance at these things. And so if it becomes a situation where we're asking the members to pay, then it has to really be, pizza money, because how else are you going to pay, to be involved, especially to contribute to a community of which you're a part. So, I think, the goal is nobody will be turned away for lack of ability to pay, including ideas around extending the scholarship program to actually officially make that a piece of it. It's like, let us know why you need to go to this thing for free and we'll work it out, kind of stuff. But again, details to follow, but that's the spirit of it.
Yeah. Cool. If there's any more, are there any more questions about pricing or affordability?
We'll get there. We're going to go through these one at a time. There are a couple, I think, that touch on other aspects of it too. So thanks, Eric and Matt, and thank you, Ashley. Let's, Courtney, if you want to unmute and ask your question, it's kind of next in order. That'd be great.
Hi, yeah. So my question, before I ask my question, I just want to say thanks to Eric for saying that lack of funding won't be a barrier to the MCN community. As someone who was laid off this year, I just really appreciate hearing that. My question, though, was about the virtual nature. If we put in an idea and you really love it, but it's not quite massaged the right way for online presentation, is that something that you might be able to help us with? Are you going to have this town hall or something where you can help us massage our ideas?
Yeah, this is Andrea. I don't know if we would host a full town hall, but happy to help massage through any sort of ideas that come our way. I think definitely email us if you have an idea. And as we have more clarity on what platforms that we'll be offering, we do intend to offer some sort of webinars or, the speaker resources that we typically provide with an on-site conference the same way this year as well.
Awesome. Resources sound great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Andrea. Courtney. Yeah, Lucy Rodaglia, if you would like to ask your question next, you can unmute.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. As someone who has been freelancing for a few years, I've been self-financing. So the pricing question was definitely relevant to me, even though I'm a little bit in a different boat. But my question relates to the social aspect of MCN and how in-person, one-to-one networking connections really amplify the benefits of going to any conference. And so in lieu of meeting in person, how might you plan to facilitate some open-ended social experiences outside of the presentations?
I'm going to go for, hi, Lucy. Good to see you. Okay, so the first part of that answer, I think we're looking at different platforms right now, including one that's called Hopin, and I'm going to put oops, there you go. I put that in the chat. So it's an all-in-one a virtual conference platform that incorporates kind of like a opening plenary, event reception with an event stage, event networking opportunities, sessions, booth, and even registration. But there are certainly others out there. So whether it's that or other networking opportunities on this platform or other, it will definitely be part of the experience. And to be quite honest with you, I think it need not wait for the conference for us or the community to come up with suggestions to host kind of virtual networking event. As you said, I mean the connection and maintaining those relationships is obviously what is the purpose pretty much at any conference, but even more so for this community. So that's one of them. The second part of that answer, I think we need to look at not this as this is an evolving situation, and it's also a bunch of evolving solutions. What the future holds. As you all know, it's so difficult to plan really like 2 weeks ahead of today in all earnestness. So I think we need to look at 2020 just as 2020, and then we'll see what happens in 2021. But my vision of the future is pretty much the professional development and the content availability will be virtual, meaning it'll be online 24/7, kind of on demand. And whether there's an annual conference with 600 people or more regional, local, one-day event, on a regular basis, that I could also see as a way to kind of until there's I don't think there will be going back to a normal, but I think this is an option that would be available for us. But for this year, event networking, on online, whether it's on this platform or others, is something that we'll be considering as well. Matt, others, feel free to jump in. Does that answer your question, Lucy?
I did want to contribute like a thought or two. One is that, Lucy, a couple of things. One is we're obviously looking to partner with things that are already ongoing, drinking about museums, virtual karaoke, those kinds of things that is part of the same community. It's not, we don't have to own it or brand it per se to just be, to sort of envelop it and support it and things like that. So there's always that kind of stuff. But the other side is that, like, I spend more time than I ought to on that exact same question. And I just invite you and everybody to help us think about it. This is not an answer that we are going to present to you. You know what I mean? This is an answer we're going to come up with together. And so whatever that means, you have an idea, email us or find us on Twitter or whatever. But part of my interest in doing this town hall thing was really for people to see people's faces and know oh, okay, they said they wanted to hear from us, because we really do, because we need answers just like you guys need answers, because again, we're all the same. We're all in this together. So anyway, you come across something amazing, send it our way. Paige already put something in the chat room about a platform she's using. I made a joke about a Dungeons and Dragons platform that I'm playing around with, and now I might be stuck doing a session on that. So, you know what I mean? Whatever it takes. So.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Lucy. I'm going to hand the mic now to Douglas Hegley. I know you have, I think, the next question if you want to unmute. Thanks.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for doing this. I see there's more chat activity going on, so good luck. I think it's going to accelerate. My question has to do with learning from other virtual conferences, and I've been attending a few of them, and I saw that Robin posted she's going to do one on Hopin, so I'll be really curious to hear how she does that. I don't know how many people are trying to attend MuseWeb. I love those guys, and they pulled it off in a very short period of time, and kudos to them. On the other hand, it was awful. Really, the idea of trying to pack what would have been an on-site conference into the same period of time with back-to-back-to-back video meetings really didn't work. And frankly, in this time and with current working conditions, I just can't block off 3 entire days. It's not possible. So I ended up missing at least 80% of that conference, even though I really wanted to be there. And I'll also say, maybe it's only me, but Second Life is awful. Please don't ever use anything like that for anything you ever do. They use Microsoft Teams, which is a okay platform. There were cross-domain issues constantly happening. I don't know if other people use Teams in their domain, but there's a lot of back-end IT work that needs to be done if you're crossing domains with Teams. So a lot of people struggled connecting, or could connect and could hear but couldn't be heard, or couldn't see the chat. There was just sort of nonstop problems that way. MuseWeb went to a membership model. They tried to spin up we already have a membership model, so it's just something to think about in terms of messaging, Eric and Matt especially. Like if we're already paying a membership fee, what does a conference fee look like on top of that? I know you're wrestling with that. Mm-hmm. What else did I have? This idea of spreading things out, and a couple of people noticed that. I went to another virtual conference that went from being a 2-day immersive to being every Thursday afternoon for a month. And it was so refreshing and worked extremely well. They gave us a lot of advance notice. That's the way it was going to be. It would start after lunch, and then it would take a short break in the evening and then come back together between about 7 and 9 p.m. I don't know if any of you have ever attended the I/O Festival, which is a big sort of digital design festival. They do the same thing. They don't start any sessions ever in the morning. All their sessions are afternoon, and all their plenary stuff is in the evening. It works extremely well. It's just something for you to consider. The last thing I'll throw in, and I'll shut up, is that orientation sessions are pretty important for virtual conferences. I've seen the mistake in everyone I've been to so far that the only orientation session is the very first half hour of the conference. And if you don't make that half hour, you can never get any orientation whatsoever. The one that I did that was spread out over those 4 days held about 5 or 6 orientation sessions at different times and different days before it all happened, and a refresher course in the middle, which helped everyone get oriented and be sort of on board with how that conference was functioning. Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm going to respond very quickly, if I may. Thanks, Douglas. These are all great points, and we've been, it's going to be, as I said earlier, the good thing on our side is that we have a longer runway to think about these things. So the orientation session, absolutely. I've personally been thinking about extending the conference maybe over a 2-week period, in times of block. But the way that we're kind of approaching this, the overall content that's produced by MCN would be, again, 24/7 online, but in blocks of time, so that you will know. For example, this is just out of I'm illustrating this, right? So every Monday and Thursday between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern is a block time for MCN content, whether that's a SIG generated content or a community event or networking event, but blocks of time throughout the year that you can rely on, and you can kind of block and say, okay, I don't have to rearrange my calendar for it, right? And the same would be true for the conference. And we don't know yet whether it'll be, we want MCN to be, the MuseState Global month, essentially, with the MCN conference, content kind of
MCN November.
MCN November with one N.
MCN November.
Right? But it goes along with what you're saying, and whether or not there is appetite for meeting over 2 weeks, 3 weeks, who knows? We'd be happy to get your feedback on that. And just know that all of this is purely still being talked, so nothing is for real. But I hope that answers some of your questions, Douglas.
Yeah, that was great. Go ahead, Andrea.
Oh, I was going to say, Douglas, thank you for these notes, and that all of those things, and then some other things that we're considering in looking at the program schedule. You bring up a really good point. Sitting down in front of a computer for the same amount of time as one would spend, hopping from session to session, it's just a very different experience, and one that's taxing in its own special way. So we would not expect someone to do the same. And we are, in that vein, also thinking about what sort of content make sense to go live with and have, and versus what are things that could be released after the fact, because an evening keynote may work for some but not for others, depending on the obligations beyond the conference. And so we're very mindful of that.
I was just going to throw out that one of the things we talked about a few weeks ago, and I'm sure you can appreciate this, Doug, is that we almost sent out like a survey, like, hey, community, while you're, trying to survive, what do you want from MCN? And so like we didn't, do that in the same degree that we might have, but we do need to know. And I think, so one of the things I've said is like, if it's just an hour on my calendar, it's probably going to get mowed over by a meeting. But if it was 3 hours, maybe I could hold it. It's like, so I think we're looking for that. Like, what does the community really feel like the most people could show up for in this way? And so we, like, to Eric's point, like maybe it's carving out 2 or 3 hour chunks so that you can, like, because there's no serendipity if you're just Googling for the session you want, like you don't accidentally see a session or the last half of a session. So we're very interested in how to do that, like how to create little blocks of MCN in people's otherwise very busy life. So yeah, whatever people can experience elsewhere and let us know about,
And the last point, time zones. We are aware that we go coast to coast and beyond then, so we're trying to keep that in line too.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Douglas. It brought up a great conversation. I'm going to pass the mic now over to Jeremy Monroe, if you want to unmute.
Hey, yeah. Hi, everybody. My question was that considering the rise of museum unionization and that AAM and other conferences have flirted with having sessions that are explicitly anti-labor, will MCN commit to not allowing any sessions that are anti-union or anti-labor? Specifically, I'd like to see the conference address a model of sustainability that goes beyond dealing with how to fix burnout and instead seeks to explore the ways in which we can organize to address the systemic and structural inequities in our field that are all too obvious now that many of my friends have been laid off. And also empathy for laid off folks, and that realize that talking about the new shiny thing that you're working on, or what vendor is making some cool thing, or the cool engagement you're doing with audiences doesn't fall well on somebody who's laid off, doesn't have a paycheck, and doesn't know how they're going to make rent next month. And we might still be dealing with that in November. And so, yeah, just generally just to recognize that for the conference to recognize that we live not just in difficult times or tough times or these other phrases that get thrown around, but a kind of like we are in tragedy, we are in historical epic shift here, and to like recognize the gravity of that as we all progress forward with proposals and conference organization. Thank you.
Hello, Jeremy. I'll be happy to take your question. Maybe you don't recall that even last November we passed a really wonderful how to unionize your museum session. This was led by Claire Bencham and then Annabelle, Jillian, and Hannah. This was a wonderful, wonderful, well-attended session, and I will say that the whole purpose of MCN is to reflect the dialogues that are going in our communities. And if this is a critical moment for communities, we out there to listen and to reflect on it and make room for those reflections. So on the end of us, as long as it makes sense for a community, absolutely.
True.
Okay, thank you very much for the question, Jeremy. I'm going to hand the digital microphone over now to Cyprian, if you're able to unmute. Thank you. And if not, I can ask. Yep, cool.
Hi, I'm Cyprian. We are attending the first time in an MCN virtual conversation, so nice. Really happy to be here. We are right now in France, in Europe, and we are a vendor, Librio. We participated in MuseWeb conferences, and it was some innovation over there, but also some exceptional and weird, I would say, Second Life situations. But it was like something new, something to consider, something to experience. So it was interesting. My question was, as a vendor, how could we imagine having some kind of digital or virtual booth presence during these new formats for MCN? So yeah, that's the question.
I'm happy to take that. Salut Cyprien. So yeah, depending on the platform that we're going to be using, there would be probably an opportunity for us to have a virtual event booth, but we're also rethinking our vendor offering for all vendors and way that we can involve our commercial partners on a rolling basis. So that would probably be part of another conversation, because I think this is more for users, the community. But I will reach out to you and others if you'd like to discuss that. But absolutely, we will. This is part of the conversation as well.
Would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, thank you for the question, Cyprian. Let's now hand the virtual mic over to Adrian Adams. I think you had a really great question. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Adrian Adams. I'm a fellow at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and my question is in specific regard to the subscription model that was mentioned earlier by Eric, and particularly with around the content, and if the content that's available within sort of the subscription models shapes or shifts the MCN audience or designated audience.
It's a good question. I'm going to give a preliminary answer. No, I don't think it does. I think the conversations and the topics would be largely, at least year-round, would be largely driven by our communities of practices, which are our SIGs. So the way that I was imagining this, for example, would be, each month could be, again, this is all up in the air, right? But January could be digital imaging month, right? With the digital imaging SIG and perhaps the IIIF and, a